Today's portion is called Emor, and it means to speak. And thank you, Mauricio, for bringing us this wonderful message. Now, it contains these following topics. First, the regulations governing the life and the offerings of the Kohanim. Second, we read about the Moedim, which are God's appointed times in the Jewish calendar. We have Shabbat, we have Yom Teruah, which is also known as Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and then Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot. These are all the Moedim. And then third, it deals with the ordinance regarding the olive oil for lighting the menorah and the ingredients for the sanctuary bread. Also, rules for a blasphemer of God's name is described. Now, at first glance, this portion seems to have little applications to our daily life, since it addresses not only the daily life of the Kohanim, as well as ordinary people, but let's see how we can apply it to our lives. Sorry. The Kohen fulfilled certain roles, which did not necessarily make them better human beings or give them certain privileges over others. Rather, their role was to serve God, and as they served God, they served others. To serve God and to be presentable before Him had to be done through daily living. This is the first teaching that I would like to highlight in this portion. God must be present in everything we do. We must act by honoring and elevating His divine name in our daily lives. Doesn't matter whether we're washing dishes, sweeping the floor, driving our car, taking the bus, shopping, or working. God has entrusted us to do this so that this world would be a better place. At all times, our standard of life and behavior must be like that of the Kohen, knowing that we have a role, but that this role requires us to be aware that we are always before the eternal. This in turn implies that we must have a high standard in how we dress, in our attitude toward service, any type of service, our work ethic, our behavior, conduct, knowing our limitations of what we can and cannot do, and taking care of our interpersonal relationships, as well as what we eat. Even our diet is important. We read what a Kohen could and could not do. The first ordinance given to them was that they could not come into contact with the dead, except for their closest relatives, such as a wife, parents, son, or virgin sister. There's a saying in Spanish, tell me who you are with, and I will tell you who you are. I remember our Rabbi used to say that. In practical terms, a dead body can no longer contain life. And who is our source of life? God. Psalms, Tehillim 36:9 says, for in you is the source of life. So today there are many people who are like the walking dead because they have willfully removed the source of life from within them. Yes, God is in their midst, but they are committing spiritual suicide and emulating death. Unlike the modern world that regards discrimination as a human right, from the beginning of creation, God does differentiate. He separated life and death, day and night, earth and water. That is, we shouldn't fall into the progressive ideas that we should form ties with the spiritually dead. Proverbs 22:5, Mishlei says, thorns and snares are in the path of the wicked. He who cares for his soul will turn away from them. So what should we do with the dead? Well, here's an example. Suppose a person, by being a drug dealer who emanates death, wants to get closer to God. Should we join him and taint ourselves or stay away from him? This is a gray area. Should we discriminate against him because he's truly a bad person? Personally, I would be very cautious because first, I don't know his intentions. And these types of people often look for a symbol of good luck, which could be a symbol of religion and not really God. Usually they are bloodthirsty and perverse, and they look to religion, no matter what it is, for a kind of protection insurance, thinking that their bad deeds need a little whitewash so that divine judgment doesn't come upon them swiftly. Let him be inflated, thinking that a little generosity will cover his sins. But what does the Torah tell us? Do not defile yourself for one who is dead among his people. That's in chapter 21, verse 1. A different case is that he was evil, but now totally changed his life. So this simple example applies to us. Let's not defile ourselves because of a dead person. Sooner or later, we too may become defiled. But by what type of death could the Kohen defile himself? It's interesting that the Kohen gives us the order. His wife first, then his mother, then his father, followed by his son, daughter, brother, and finally his virgin sister. First, the Torah assumes that the Kohen is a married man. Did you know that the fact that there are still marriages taking place in the world today is a global challenge? It's now quite common that young people prefer to replace children with pets, or the majority to have an open relationship without getting married, or live together, which translates into living in socially accepted sex. People are running away from commitment. The Torah is teaching us that to be engaged in this physical world, it is necessary to be engaged in the spiritual world. So if we're married, it's a miracle, and the miracle must be appreciated and nurtured. Our wife or husband is our priority, even over our parents, children, and siblings. If the order in the Torah is not prioritized, there will be chaos. How many marriages fail today because this is ignored? Now, it goes both ways. The husband prioritizes his wife, and the rest of the family understands this. Here's a simple example. My wife asked me to go to the supermarket, and my mother asked me to go to the beauty salon at the same time. Who is my priority? According to the Torah, it is my wife. She only has one husband, while my mother could have other children and change her appointment. The right thing to do would be to ask my wife if we could drop my mother off before going to the supermarket. In other words, we decide together. There will be times that the decision is more complicated, but there needs to be an agreement between husband and wife. In this way, the Torah teaches us wisdom. After understanding what having a wife means in my family relationships, the Torah suggests that the Kohen should enjoy a healthy and close relationship with his parents, that is, his mother and father, in that order. His mother first, and then his father. It's sad today to see how many adults are growing old alone, forgotten by their children or their family. Where is the honor toward parents today? The problem has increased due to migration as a consequence of globalization. Children at a productive age forget about their parents and do not maintain a close relationship with them. They don't know if they ate, if they lack clothes, if they can meet their minimum daily expenses, if they have bathed, or if they have spoken to someone during the day, anyone, not just the four walls. Let's not forget that who we are today is the result of the effort and sacrifice of someone who nurtured and made us what we are. We were clearly told at Mount Sinai, honor your father and your mother, and fear your mother and your father. Next, the Cohen's priority focused upon his son and daughter. Priorities are strange here, and we as men tend to prioritize girls who are more vulnerable than boys. It's as if caring for girls is something more innate, and we think that boys can raise themselves. In my case, meaning Mauricio, not me, I have 2 boys and a girl, and I think that my daughter is more vulnerable and requires my protection, sometimes forgetting about my sons. She doesn't say that I shouldn't take care of her or nurture her, but she refers to my innate priority of her as forced awareness. The Torah leaves the virgin brothers and sisters for last. That is, the sister who does not enjoy the protection of a husband. Once a sister gets married, she will enjoy being a husband's priority. I've seen many cases where siblings are brought into homes to live together, and this generates conflicts. Don't involve your siblings in your relationships. It is counterproductive. Next, the priority is upon the body. It deals with taking care of our body by not getting tattoos, by not improperly trimming our hair, or self-flagellation. Tattoos are the fashion today, along with strange haircuts, which some might say are definitely unbecoming, in addition to piercings all over the body to the point that some have become deformed. The Torah teaches us, Kohen, dare to be different. Emor also places limits on the Kohen's relationships and choice of wife. For example, he has to marry someone pure, innocent, not just any woman. The Torah gives us an example of reverse psychology. If my daughter becomes a prostitute, she should be executed. And if I read this through modern eyes of today, 2024, I would say, whoa, the Torah is evil. But in reality, what it is telling us is, Cohen, raise your daughter in such a way that she does not seek prostitution as an option on how to live. It is also counterproductive, counterculture, since in Canaan, prostitution was associated with religious service. To the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, the standard was even higher. From this, we learn that the more responsibility we have, the greater our dedication to serving the eternal needs to be. Because we approach God, we are able to be closer to him. Next, no Kohen with any disability could offer sacrifices. He could eat the offerings. However, he was not allowed to approach the altar. This raises the question, if God created him with a disability or allowed the circumstances that led to his disability, wouldn't this be a little discriminatory? Again, this simple teaching needs to be filtered through the modern progressive mind. There are several reasons for this, in my opinion. First, carrying out the work pertaining to the offerings required a lot of physical strength. He really needed to be like an athlete. For example, imagine the hard work required when a bull had to be offered. It was really exhausting. And if we were not spiritualize it so much, but rather see it in daily practical life, God's commandment was really to protect the life of the Kohen, to preserve his integrity. Why subject him to a task that involved greater wear and tear on him than any normal person would have? For example, if I were lame, what would be the risk of my falling off the altar with an animal that I'm about to offer? Obviously, it would be greater than that of a normal person. And if I were blind, what are the chances that I could burn myself in the fire on the altar or cut my hand because I couldn't see the edge of the knife? And we could mention many more things, but the Eternal is telling us that he is preventing their role. But is the Eternal telling us that he is preventing their role as Kohanim? No. What the Eternal wants is that they would perform activities that are safe for them. Finally, the portion of food that God has given you, is for you. We read that the meat for the Cohen's consumption, the product of his offerings, was exclusively for him. They couldn't share it with lay people, the ordinary people. However, they could share it with the most vulnerable of women, such as widowed daughters and women slaves. I believe that what God has given us, we should take care of. Although I could go on, I would just like to add that this portion also teaches us other things for our daily lives. We must present ourselves to God with the best offerings without defects. We read that in chapters 22 and 23. And we must honor the time that God has given us. It's the most valuable thing above all that he's given us. And if we do not know how to manage it, and we are not honoring it, we must sanctify what we speak. Whoever blasphemes the divine name is similar to whoever murders a human being. For this reason, Yochanan, a Talmid, a student of Yeshua, said, "Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer." If we examine every aspect of this portion, we realize how practical the Torah is, which is why it is the source of life, as Mishle says in chapter 13, verse 14. The Torah of the wise is a fountain of life. You might say that this only applies to the families of the Kohanim. However, God said that we were Israel, we were kings and Kohanim in Shemot 19:6. So yes, this applies to us too. My prayer this Shabbat is that we put the Torah into practice in our daily lives so that we can be a source of life and light in our environment. Shabbat Shalom.